Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the second edition of the TRConnect webinar series. I'm Michael Barrett, Events and CSR Head at TR Business.
And I'm Charlotte Turner, Editorial Director at TR Business.
So today's webinar is about engaging customers across all touch points, physical, digital, and human. We hope and trust you'll find it constructive. Charlotte will introduce you to today's panelists in a few moments. They're all waiting in the wings, eager to take part. So thank you for joining us. And thank you also for the amazing support for our new online webinar event series. We had over 500 attendees for the first edition during the live event, and over 740 individual viewers watched the recording on trbusiness.com. So for today's event, we have over 750 registered guests and currently over 330 logging in, and there's more 350 logging in every second as we proceed. So as you may have read, unfortunately, not all those who registered for the previous webinar were able to access the live event. So So we've since increased the platform capacity to allow up to 1,000 viewers to watch live. Hopefully that will enable all to enter this live session. So moving on, I just want to take you very quickly through the forthcoming events in our TRConnect webinar series. As you can see on the recording of the first edition is available on trbusiness.com if you did miss it. The next edition after today's event will be on 30th of June and will focus on China and the much anticipated return of the Chinese passenger. We'll have some exclusive insights from our research partners, Mindset, who are conducting a special survey among Chinese passengers for that webinar. We'll also have a very exciting lineup of speakers from retailers, digital marketing specialists, and other experts. So please stay tuned to trbusiness.com as we'll be announcing the full program very soon. Following that webinar, we'll be addressing a number of themes which you can see on the screen there, all from a post-COVID-19 perspective, of course. As you'll have read, the TR Business Digital Online Forum TR Marketplace is receiving fantastic feedback and support from all sides. We have a very intensive and comprehensive lineup of webinar sessions throughout the TR Marketplace event, which will take place during the last week of September. At the same time, the TFWA World Exhibition was due to take place in Cannes. The TR Marketplace will enable brands and retailers to meet throughout the week on an intuitive networking platform, but more on that a little later. One final housekeeping note before I hand over to Charlotte. You can ask questions of all our panelists today, so please do use the Q&A panel on your GoToWebinar console for that. We'll have a few audience polls like we did last time also to gauge your views on some of the themes we'll be discussing today. So please do take part in those. When we have the poll, you may need to deactivate and reactivate your full screen view in order to click on the screen and give your answer. And you can see that the small window button below the mute microphone button on the console. That's where you do that. So enough from me. I'll now hand you over to Charlotte, who will lead us through today's webinar. Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm absolutely delighted at the number of people that are attending again today. We set the bar very high for the inaugural webinar on the 5th of May, and I'm so pleased that so many have returned for round 2, which I think promises to be an absolutely fascinating but also data and information rich session today. It's my task and pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel of speakers with us today. First up, we will welcome Clara Soucet, who's the Travel Retail Research Director at Mindset. She'll be presenting the company's findings on attitudes and expectations pre and post COVID-19 from research they've conducted in May. Clara will then be followed by Alan Brennan, who is the Managing Director of DC GTR, who will present some examples of some actionable digital, VR and AR initiatives that can quite quickly be implemented for duty free. After Alan, we will invite Vimal Rai, who is the founder and managing director of Trace Consulting. He will be offering his predictions and recommendations for the travel industry at large, but also more particularly for the in-flight retail business. And finally, we'll be welcoming Ramesh Gadambi, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Dubai Duty Free, who is very generously sharing the company's blueprint for their store reopening, which we understand will be happening in a phased approach. Of course, after the presentations, we'll invite all the speakers to participate in a Q&A session, and they'll be responding, reacting, and offering their perspectives to the exclusive insights that we'll be hearing here today. But more importantly, they'll be answering questions from you. And of course, you can submit these questions at any time during the webinar by your GoToWebinar module, which is just to the right of me at the moment as I'm looking at it. I'd really love to thank our speakers at this point for taking part in the webinar today. They have some really fascinating presentations, really stimulating and motivating ideas. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Clara to kick us off. Michael, can you pass over the controls to Clara, please?
Okay. Clara, we're just going to get you on webcam.
Okay, hello everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Charlotte, for the introduction. So as Charlotte mentioned, what I will be talking about today is some research that we have conducted at Mindset about the customer experience, attitudes and expectations. And we're going to be looking at pre and post COVID-19 behaviors. So just before we start, a few points about what we researched and how we did it. So the data that you will see today is based on interviews that we have conducted very recently between May 15th and May 20th, 2020. And we did this using our database of international travelers. So these are people whom we had recruited previously at airports around the world. And we can then recontact them via email to ask them to answer our questions on various topics. The target group that we were interested in talking to this time were all international travelers coming from all regions of the world. And we wanted to make sure they had flown at least twice in the last 12 months. So they are actually used to travel, and that they have visited a travel retail shop at least once in the last year, because we didn't want to include anyone who would have previously been a duty-free shopping rejecter anyway. Then our sample was a total of 1,500, so very robust, which allows us to look for differences between regions, groups, and so on. And we wanted to make sure we were including all types of travelers. So we had business and leisure travelers, frequent, but also occasional travelers, and of all the different age groups. So to begin with, I think it's really interesting to look at the research we've done in the past to understand where we were standing before the COVID-19 crisis, and what was the importance of experiential retail. Because of course, experiential retail is the topic of our discussion today, and we're going to be looking at the future. But it is, however, extremely important to understand what happened before and what was the evolution. And indeed, all the research that we had conducted in the past years was showing that the importance of experiential retail was increasing year after year, survey after survey. So the first important point to mention is to look at the planning level of purchases, because this obviously has a huge impact on in-store engagement. So what you can see here is the extent to which duty-free shoppers had actually planned their purchase before going to the store. What we see is that 25% were buying purely on impulse, whereas the rest had planned their purchase. However, if we look in more details, we see that the majority of those planners did what we call general planning, meaning that they had an idea in mind, or for example, they knew they wanted to buy a gift, or they had a few brands that they were interested in looking at, but they hadn't specifically decided what they wanted to buy. The specific planners, on the other hand, represented 22%. So this tells us that we have 78%, so 8 out of 10 shoppers practically, who were undecided, meaning that there was still a huge opportunity to engage with them when they were in the store, hence really highlighting the importance of in-store elements to boost the conversion, but also to have an impact on the choice of products they have in their shopping basket, and to make their experience more relevant to them. When we look at this across categories, we see there's specific categories for which this share of undecided shoppers is even more important. And it's first of all, souvenirs and gift items, but also confectionery, jewelry and watches, and fashion and accessories. So these 4 categories have the highest share of people who are undecided about what they want to buy when they reach the store. Then what we see obviously is that actually in terms of drivers to purchase, experience in the store is also very important. 58% mention it as a reason for buying in duty free. It's only second to values and promotion, which is obviously a very important driver in our industry still. And if we dig a little deeper, what you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we see that the aspects of the experience that were the most likely to be driving a purchase were, first of all, be able to sample or test products in the store. Then the actual displays or digital screens that they could see in the store were very important. Then in third place, we have pop-up stores. And then finally, more interactive sorts of brand activations or contests and games and so on. Then we also wanted to ask our respondents directly how important was the experience. So 21% of visitors told us that actually enjoying the experience was the main reason why they visited a duty-free store. So we see it's a very, very powerful footfall driver. But then on the other hand, we see that 56% of those who didn't visit acknowledge that they would have been more willing to go to a store if they knew they were going to find a richer and more entertaining experience. So again, really showing that we saw before it has an impact amongst those who are inside the store to convince them to buy, but also even among those who are not visiting the store, it's also a way to get them to enter the store. And then another obviously very, very important aspect of the experience, and we'll be discussing how this will look in a post-COVID world, but just as a reminder, 50% of shoppers used to interact with the staff when they were in the duty-free shop, and this was even more important in regions such as the Middle East, but also Asia Pacific. But then more importantly, amongst those who interact, we have more than half who say that that interaction had an influence on their decision to choose. It could have been that they were undecided between different products and the staff helped them, or in some cases they even bought something different than they had initially planned because of the advice from the staff. So it's really a very, very important driver of decision in the store. Then we also asked their perception about the interaction that they have, and 74% of duty-free buyers who had an interaction with the sales staff recognized that the information they received was helpful. And then 4 out of 10 of those who interacted said that it contributed to provide a special experience. So on the one hand, it is a very functional aspect. It provides helpful information. It helps them to decide what to buy. But also at the same time, it helps them to get that special experience that they're really craving. So it could be through the attitude of service, it could be through the personal touch of the interaction, but also through their knowledge and so on. So it's really that fine balance between being helpful, but at the same time providing something special, something unique, which travelers are expecting. Then we also wanted to understand what aspects were the most relevant in providing a pleasant shopping experience to our travelers. And we saw that 7 out of 10 said that they bought a product specifically because it was standing out on the shelf or display or counter. So this is extremely important. Yes, on the one hand, shoppers rely a lot on staff interaction. We saw before 50% of them actually expect to get help from the staff, but at the same time, everything that happens directly on the shelf or on the display is very important. And we see that in fact, and we will also be talking about this in a post-COVID scenario, we see that 9 out of 10 are actually touching or used to touch products to look at the packaging, to read information, and then about half of them tried it or tested products when it was possible inside the store. So again, very important to start thinking about how this will be achieved with the new normal. So we've seen that in-store experience used to be very important, and that over time it became increasingly so. But what we've also seen is that in this post-COVID-19 scenario, it will really become a must-have, because it will be increasingly important for our industry to be able to differentiate from other channels, to reassure shoppers and to make sure we manage to get them back. And a key point, and I'm sure the other panelists will also be talking about this a lot, is all digital aspects and the online shopping, because indeed what we found is that 36% of travelers plan to shop more online than they used to before the crisis, and their spend, as you can see, has also gone up quite impressively by 23%. So they spend 23% more on online shopping than they used to before the crisis. So this really raises the question of what would be the role of online for our industry. On the one hand, surely it can be perceived as a threat, in the sense that travelers plan to buy more online, so potentially they would buy less at the airport. But at the same time, it's also a huge opportunity, because we've seen that the majority of shoppers are actually starting to plan their purchase before they get to the airport. So the ability to provide more pre-trip touch points to allow them to browse for products online and potentially to pre-order will definitely meet their needs. So it's really about finding the balance between offering all the needed information, offering the ease of shopping online, but at the same time also offering a very compelling, a very engaging experience inside the store when they do get to the airport. So now let's look at our scenario in the post-COVID situation and how things will look at the airport. And the first thing I wanted to discuss is not necessarily related specifically to travel retail or traveling, but how societies have changed, how people's mindsets have changed in the past few months, and how this can reflect on their shopping habits. So first of all, you see this first box here, an anxious and emotional society. So we see that 3 out of 10 travelers say that the lockdown has caused them anxiety and stress. And this is also reflected directly in their spending habits, because 1 out of 4 are specifically worried about having less disposable money to spend in the future. So we can expect that our travelers are going to become more cautious, maybe more demanding about how they spend their money, because either they will have less money available, or even if it didn't actually have an impact on them, their mindset might have changed. They've become a bit more cautious. The second point to discuss is their relationship to brands and how they relate to them. And we see that 6 out of 10 expressed doubts about whether brands and companies had a sincere and genuine engagement during the crisis and their social initiatives. So this is also something for brands to communicate on very transparently. Then when it comes specifically the spending, so we saw before, some of them are worried about having less money available, and indeed 61% will allocate a smaller share of their budget to shopping than they used to before the crisis. So they will most likely shift to more essential purchases. So the challenge will be to be able to retain a large share of that shopping budget, specifically for the travel retail industry. Then when we move on to specifically technology and digital aspects, we've seen that 89% expect more digitalization and more technology offers when shopping, eating out, and so on. So travelers really expect that this is going to become more and more an aspect of the daily life, and that it could be a way in which to adapt to the new rules and the new way of doing things. And indeed, the majority of them are also willing to use digital devices more frequently for shopping specifically. So this is at the same time an expectation, but also we will see a way to circumvent some of the worries or some of the challenges that we will be facing. And then the last one, which is maybe a bit more general, we've seen that 39% claim that because of the lockdown, because of the crisis and the change in their lifestyle for a few months, they've been able to start again appreciating the more simple and valuable things of their daily life. And they claim to be a bit more detached from more materialistic concerns than they used to in the past. So very clearly, this crisis has changed, and I'm sure you've all read a lot about it, have changed the way travelers think in general, have changed the way they think about shopping specifically. And if we now move on to the impact on traveling and duty-free shopping more specifically, we see there's some very clear implications for our industry. The first one is that 6 out of 10 travelers claim that they will refrain from being close to retail ambassadors or sales staff. So this will be a huge point to overcome, because we've seen before the interaction with the sales staff was a very important part of experiential retail for travelers. Then we have 45% who will refrain from testing or trying products in the duty-free shop because they don't necessarily trust having to touch products inside the store. Indeed, we see that more than half will refrain from unnecessarily touching products. So again, this raises a lot of questions for the categories where touching or testing the product was especially important. So I'm thinking about fragrances, but also confectionery, spirits, and so on. And then the last point, interestingly, we see that the 12% say that they will be more likely to shop online and collect items. So online pre-ordering, as I mentioned before, could be a way to attract travelers back to our industry once they resume traveling. And for sure, they seem to be more interested in it than they used to a few months ago. So then, before I finish my presentation, we wanted to share with you the findings of a bit of special part of the survey that we run. So what we did is that we researched from different ideas of digital, technological, or virtual innovations, which could be used to make the shopping experience easier and also more in line with the expectations in a post-COVID world. And we asked our respondents to rate all of these ideas. And I will now show you the top 10 in order of preference. So the first one at 84% of acceptance rate is an app or QR code on scanning on the smartphone to be able to find out more about products, but also for final payment. So definitely, and I'm sure my colleagues will tell you more about this in the next presentation, there is an expectation for digital to take more and more space when it comes to the more transactional aspects of the shopping experience, but also as a way to gain more experience and to avoid having to interact very closely with a sales advisor or having to touch the products to find out more information about them. Then the second one, also in line with one of the barriers that we identified before, would be to have machines or robots that allow you to spray fragrances when based on the request of the shopper. Then the third one is something that obviously already exists, but 78% of shoppers in duty-free would expect to see more and more of this. So it would be digital screens that display a trailer about the brand products, history, origin, and so on. So having much more digital engagement inside the store as a way to provide more meaningful content to travelers. The fourth would be what you can see here on the screen of a virtual mirror or an app which allows you to virtually try on makeup. So again, this already exists. You've all seen it in some airports, but it would be more and more important according to travelers because it allows them to try products without having to touch them directly. The fifth one would be to offer augmented reality or virtual reality experience where shoppers can actually picture how the product usage would be in real life. So for example, wearing a VR helmet and find yourself directly in a party consuming a beverage, or imagining that you're in a birthday party for children when you're gifting the chocolate and so on. So really to have a much more immersive experience when testing the products inside the store. Then again, going back to beauty products, a device which allows you to photograph or scan your skin and then provide recommendation based on that would also be relevant for 69%. So somewhat less important than the virtual mirror, but still interesting to shoppers. So as you can see, they expect to be more and more autonomous in the way in which they shop in duty free. Then we've also seen that augmented reality and virtual reality are also a way for shoppers to actually obtain information. So here the idea would be that shoppers answer a few profiling questions, for example, for whom they're shopping, when do they expect to consume the product, and so on. And then the screen would give them tailored specific advice about what the most suitable products are for their needs. So again, a way to somehow replace the advice they used to get from the sales staff in the store. Then Again, a bit more simple than the one we had before, but still that idea of having an entertaining and immersive experiences, but this time with a one-time use 3D glasses, so a bit more an experience more in line with what you would find, for example, in a movie theater. But still, the idea being of really immersing shoppers inside the universe of the brand. Then number 9 would be a smart shopping cart on the mobile phone. So this would actually geo-track how shoppers are moving inside the store, and then would detect when an item is picked from the shelf, and then display specific information about the product. So this appeals to a bit more self-travelers. So you see clearly less attractive than the ones that we observed in the beginning, where we had about 8 out of 10 who were excited about the idea. And the last one in our top 10 would be an app which allows customers to order a customized or personalized packaging or wrapping of the products inside the store. So they would order it on their phones, and then the wrapping would be waiting for them when they arrive at the cashier. So still allowing them to keep distance from the staff and so on. So that's it for now. I look forward to your questions later on, and to hearing the presentations from the other panelists. Here you have some information about Mindset. So we're based in Switzerland, and for those of you who don't know about us, we specialize in research for airline, aircraft manufacturers, airports, and our clients in travel retail especially. And we have access to many, many airports around the world, which allows us to interview travelers directly at the departure gates, which is how we collect all of these insights. For more information, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. Well, I just flick back to my screen. We just had a couple of questions come in about whether the presentations will be shared. So to answer that, yes, they will. The full recording of the webinar will be on trbusiness.com in the next day or two. And in the same story, you'll see the links to all the PDF files that the presenters are giving today. One interesting point Clara mentioned was that over a third, 36% of the panel that they interviewed said they're going to be spending more online, shopping more online after the crisis. And that's something that is going to be a regular theme throughout the presentations today. But the point about we need to embrace digital, it's not the enemy. We really need to make it our ally, online e-travel retail. So you'll hear more from Clara in the near future, and her colleagues throughout the TRConnect webinar series, but also during the week-long TR Marketplace Digital Forum at the end of September. During the week, the TFWA event in Cannes was to take place, as I mentioned. So Clara and the Mindset team will be providing exclusive insights across a range of topics during the TR Marketplace event. And as we announced recently as well, they'll be also meeting visitors and exhibitors at the Consumer Insights Hub throughout the week. Their insights will include category-specific insights, market and region-specific research, channel-specific insights, so airline, cruise, in-flight, etc., including digital also and e-travel retail, as we just mentioned, and other themes including staff and crew training, sustainability, purchase drivers, design, and a wide range of other themes. So if you want more information or are interested in taking part in any of those webinars, please do contact us, and you can see my email address there on the screen. Moving on. Of course, TR Marketplace is more than a week of webinars. It is the industry's first digital online exhibition and networking forum. Over the 5 days of the event, visitors will be able to meet and have video calls with exhibitors via their digital brand hubs. The hubs enable exhibitors to showcase an unlimited number of products with detailed descriptions, images, and videos, as well as host the live video meetings. TR Marketplace will open from 1 month prior to the event to enable exhibitors and visitors to arrange meetings in advance. And each user will have their own personal calendar to make booking meetings a lot easier. All of this takes place conveniently, safely, and securely within the TR Marketplace platform. The platform will remain open for 6 months after the event in a product showcase format. So this provides an additional benefit for all industry stakeholders. As mentioned, we've received huge support with most, if not all, the major retailers and many others registering to attend the event. It's free to attend for airports, airlines, cruise and ferry companies, and retailers, of course. And the one price for all policy for exhibitors means it's an affordable way for all companies to exhibit and network with clients and prospects throughout the week. So that's another of the TR Business initiatives aiming to help grow the business, your business, during these difficult and challenging times. You can find out more information on trbusiness.com/trmarketplace or by emailing any of my colleagues, Nigel, Ben, or Helen, and you can see their addresses on the screen now. So let's transition now from digital event to digital marketing in the travel retail space. I'm now going to hand over. We're going to hear from DCGTR Managing Director, Alan Brennan. And Alan, I'm just going to make your camera live if you don't get there before me. 1 second. Alan, have you got your camera on? Or do I need to ask you to? There we go. Alan, we can see you. Hi. So to ensure there was no technical issues when showing his slides and the videos he's got in his presentation, we decided to record his presentation in advance. The sound is not as loud as our microphone, so do turn up your audio to maximum for this. So here to introduce Alan's presentation is Alan Brennan himself. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Michael, and hello, everyone. Just a quick heads up on DCGTR. It's a specialized business unit of the DC Group, which works with large FMCG companies as well as retailers around the globe. We're focused in terms of DCGTR on the travel retail channel, providing creative commercial tech to different stakeholders in the industry. Coming back to Clara's presentations, there was a number of key insights there. And what I want to really share within this presentation is the how digital can be an enabler to basically meet the needs and expectations of the customer in the new norm. It highlights basically practical tech solutions that can be implemented today, meaning in the next 12 months. And they can be part of an integrated digital and physical customer journey. They are basically low cost, easy to implement, easy to use, are customer centric, and ultimately have the potential to really enhance the customer experience both online and offline. So I trust it'll add value to the overall webinar as we collectively look forward to the reopening of travel retail in the coming weeks and months and engaging with customers both online and offline to improve the actual customer experience. So as Michael said, it's a pre-recording really to help with the navigation through the platform to make it more seamless. So please increase your volume on your platform that you're using to hear the actual commentary. So Michael, I'll hand back to you.
Okay, here we go with Alan's presentation.
Today, I would like to share with you some views on how digital can enrich the customer experience in the new norm. The highlighted tech within the presentation are examples of low-cost, high-impact solutions that can be mobilized and implemented today as we plan to engage customers in the coming months. As countries start to reopen their borders, we all have to be mindful the operating environment will look and feel very different than before, with new rules such as social distancing being implemented, all of which will have a major impact on the customer experience. Whilst there are a number of unanswered questions as to what the new norm will look like in travel retail, we can assume that customer priorities, needs, and associated behavior will have changed. However, we can be assured that customers' primary needs will be to keep safe and follow the rules when traveling on a journey that looks and feels very different than before. Therefore, if we are to provide an excellent customer experience, either in a digital or physical way, it's important that our decision making when looking into remodeling our retail offer, that we factor in these priorities. Research tells us the early adopters who will travel will largely be younger generations, with Gen Z having a greater voice and share of these early adopters in the new norm. A generation who have been exposed and connected to digital from a young age, with smartphones largely being the hardware of choice to stay connected. They are comfortable in the digital and physical worlds and can easily navigate between both. Therefore, if we are to reach and connect with the new customer landscape in the new norm, we need to provide an integrated and seamless customer experience. With touchpoints that are part of an integrated customer journey that are seamlessly integrated between digital and physical and are a key component part of a wider omni-channel strategy. So how do we engage, surprise, and inspire customers with new priorities, needs, and behaviors? Firstly, we need to change our mindset from transactional selling to selling experiences to customers both online and in store, using technology as a platform to deliver these experiences in a seamless way, either standalone or being integrated depending on the choice of the customer. An outcome of the lockdown in many countries has seen dramatic increases in online traffic through virtual connections and online shopping, not only by younger generations, but new adopters, including baby boomers and Generation X. In short, aligned with the need to move towards selling experiences, retailers in collaboration with brands need to invest in their online offer and increase the overall engagement whilst highlighting added value services such as click and collect. Today, the majority of travel retailers have functional e-commerce sites that are focused on flattened images and price with a short description. This is a general approach regardless of product category or price. However, this packshot experience can be transformed at a low cost through simple 3D VR modeling with animation to make the experience more engaging. The following demo is of a 3D VR model created and built in less than 2 days at low cost, which can be streamed online with a standard internet and Wi-Fi connection. This particular 3D model was built from a physical product sample, inclusive of the individual chocolates, which give this very animated 360 experience online. Within 3D modeling, we can also do very complex shapes, or we can use reflective materials such as metals as well as reflective glass. Another great example of how to increase the online animated experience. You can also have embedded video to stream and highlight functionality and product features, or just for brand storytelling, as the online user has a 360 view of the actual product itself. IKEA use a lot of augmented reality to bring products to life online through their scan, browse, move, and place. It's a great way to increase visualization, even on a smartphone, and have a great customer experience online. Moving to the store and looking at how low-cost, high-impact tech can be used to create a more integrated experience between digital and physical touchpoints. But firstly, looking at physical engagement and building on the insight presented earlier by Clara that 60% of travelers will refrain from being in the proximity of retail ambassadors in store. Therefore, to provide support, product selling, advice, and help to customers in store, specifically with self-distancing and directional navigation in place, virtual retail ambassadors in real time can be activated in store through the retailer's app, building and strengthening the customer relationship and the overall experience in store. Here we've got some good examples of VR and AR digital engagement using touchscreen as well, used across many different product categories to increase the level of engagement, personalization of products, and also to be able to shop online with NFC communication between both, and also using leverage technology such as RFID and also touchscreen as a way to have a much more engaging experience and brand storytelling to the individual user in the store. However, building on the insight earlier presented by Clara and being customer centric, what about those shoppers who want to minimize physical touch, amounting to over 51% in the research shown earlier? Well, this can be achieved using NFC, or near field communication, which is technology that's been around for a number of years, and it's technology that we're all familiar with, as it's used for contactless payment for your credit or debit card. It uses radio frequency for your phone to connect and communicate, transfer information and video in a secured way with receiving tabs either embedded into the product or on the shelf edge talker showing product features and benefits, or connecting them to the website of the retailer or the individual brand. With over 3.6 billion smartphones in the world, it's the platform of choice for hardware, web, or social media shopping. Customized and personalized experiences have been a driver for increased purchase and spend, both online and offline. Therefore, to be able to create personalized experiences for customers, data is key to gain a greater insight into customers' preferences, and also to build stronger relationships through these customized product offers, both online and offline. It's all about contactless engagement, not only for speed and convenience of payment, but also to give a very engaging experience in store using technology as NFC. As we approach the new norm with stores' planned reopening, it can be overwhelming to grasp what tech is needed in the short term to meet customers' new priorities whilst giving a great experience. Therefore, keep it simple and split it into 3 different horizons: today, tomorrow, and the future. Looking at today, meaning from now to the next 12 months, be focused on the customer, their needs, and their expectations. Be very customer-centric when re-looking at the retail proposition in the new norm. Data, 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 to be able to build those customer relationships and be able to create personalized, customized offers. The mindset move from transactional selling to actual selling customer experiences, absolutely key in the new norm. It's about leveraging digital, both low cost and high impact, and looking to dial up the online offer through 3D animation and level of interaction, and also looking to integrate the digital and physical experience on the integrated customer journey and have a full 360 contactless experience. Looking ahead, it must be about continual investing in your digital experience and taking the key learnings from the start on how to continually evolve the integrated experience tomorrow and in the future as technology continually evolves in tandem with customer expectations on experience. So as we start a journey, it's important that we have collaboration between all the stakeholders to deliver a great customer experience in the new norm. Thank you very much.
Hi, Alan. Thanks so much for that presentation. There was some really thought-provoking initiatives and examples of what can be implemented now, essentially. Of course, we'll come back to you for the Q&A session later on. There are many, many questions pouring in as we speak about various presentations, but now for yours as well, you'll be happy to know. So you'll be grilled later on. I'd now like to introduce a couple of polls. I know that these were particularly well received in the last webinar that we actually conducted, and obviously they are very relevant to the presentation you just made. First one is, how important is digital now for your company in the post-COVID-19 context? Now, in order to see this poll, you may need to reduce your another screen to be able to see this poll. So we're selecting one of the following. Not very, just thinking about it, quite important, we'll probably revisit our digital strategy, or very important, vital to converting passengers in the future. Now, if you'd all like to, or you've already started voting, we'll keep going until we have a good number of people that have voted.
Just
Very
below half the people.
Yeah, sorry, Michael.
I say we're just below half the number of people who voted so far. We've got just under 500 people online at the moment, so a few more would be great. Over 50% now have voted. Looks like there's a clear winner in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you let me know when you want to. We're just coming up to 2/3 of the people who have voted so far.
Okay, perhaps maybe a countdown.
Okay, doke. 5, poll closing in 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're going to show up the results.
Very interesting. For those of you can see it, obviously you can read for yourselves, but if for those that can't see it for any reason, the most popular result was very important, vital to converting passengers in the future, with 55% of you agreeing with that statement. Quite important, we'll probably revisit our digital strategy, 38%, and just 7% saying that digital for your company in the post-COVID-19 context is not very important right now, and just thinking about it. Very perhaps not all too surprising, considering the insight that we have just heard. Right, now I think we'd like to follow that up with poll number 2. Again, this is connected with digital as well. This is, how soon will your company be revisiting its digital strategy, online or in store? Obviously, for those of you that answered in the 7% about is not very important right now, perhaps you will be thinking more about it within 3 months, or perhaps within 6 months, or potentially a little bit longer, within 12 to 18 months. And I see lots of you have already started voting now.
Again, a clear winner, it seems there. With those who are going to revisit digital, we'll be doing it probably sooner than later. We're just coming up to half of the number of people who have voted so far. Okay, still a few more. This is a multiple choice with only one option for the answer. Okay, we're going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's see the results.
Okay, again, yes, a clear winner with 57%. You will be revisiting your digital strategy online or in store within the next 3 months. 34% of you said within 6 months, and just 8% said within 12 to 18 months. Now, I know lots of you will be thinking that those results are quite binary, and there's it's not so black and white, and there are many shades of grey in between about how you can implement those strategies, cost effectiveness, etc., etc. And we'll be getting into more of those topics later on. I'd now like to introduce our next presenter. I'm delighted to welcome Vimal Rai, who is the founder and managing director of Trace Consulting, to speak next. I know that he has some very illuminating data and insight, and also his recommendations and predictions. But I know a lot of you have been more interested to learn about the in-flight retail channel more in particular, and I believe Vimal will be able to answer all your questions. I'm setting the bar very high for you there, Vimal, but please kick us off with your presentation.
Vimal's obviously flying very high up there, somewhere above the skies. Where are you, Vimal? Please tell us.
I am right over my home country, Singapore, at the moment. I really miss flying, like I'm sure many of us do.
Great backdrop.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Charlotte, for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Vimal. I've been running my own business for the last 3 years. TRACE actually stands for Travel, Retail, Aviation, Customer Excellence. And I work with startups all the way to airports and airlines and established businesses within travel, within the travel domain. And I bring the focus on the customer purely into play. In other words, it's not about how you do it, it's not about what you do, but it's about why you do something that you do. And thanks to the previous presenters for some amazing stats and some amazing ideas. I want to add on to that with a slightly different perspective, or maybe just to add on to get people thinking. And so what I'd like to talk about today is really customer engagement in a post-COVID future. Oops, can everybody see my slides? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be talking about 4 basic things today. I'm going to kick it off with data like I usually do. I'm going to try and translate that data into likely outcomes in the short to medium term. I am then going to suggest to those of you on the front line in terms of travel retail, or if you're an airline, what are some of the suggested responses? How do you want to structure your recovery and relaunch operations? And interestingly, having had a preview of Ramesh's presentation, I think some of this is actually reflected in what he's going to be talking about. And then I want to touch on something that we've been working on, which is called a post-COVID blueprint for travel retail. Some of you might have seen the press release that went out a couple of days ago. As with most of my presentations and research, I like to begin with data. Now, I use the same data sets as most other people in the industry, but I also like to add on this additional data set that is most frequently used by travel and hospitality businesses in particular, and this is known as social sentiment data. Simply put, social sentiment data is derived by examining what has been posted on social media by people like you and I about particular keywords or topics, and sentiment can obviously be positive or negative. And their proprietary algorithms that various companies use to decipher this. I feel that sentiment data is an additional way, in addition to all the other data that we see, of gauging how people feel about situations, about a brand, and so on. And this is actually used by some of the largest brands in the world as a basis for predictability of outcomes. So a lot of large brands, airports and airlines included, use social sentiment for predictions on what's going to happen in terms of passenger movements, preferences, and so on. What you see here in front of you is really a very simple chart showing the evolution of net sentiment over about 4 months, the difference between positive and negative sentiment. And these are around issues relating to travel, so airlines, cruises, hospitality, attractions, travel shopping. The data is about 2 weeks old now, but we can see a very clear uptick in terms of retail, and somewhat worrying signs, in other words, more net negative sentiment for airports and airlines. I think we can understand this because we know that we ourselves on this webinar, we're concerned about being in enclosed environments that are also crowded and packed with other people. The next piece that I want to look at is something really interesting, which allowed me to dig deeper into in-flight retail in particular. This data set that you're seeing in front of you consists of about 900 million, that's with an M, passenger conversations on social media in English over a 2-year period from February 2018 to March 2020. Now, although this isn't COVID-19 specific, we can discern some very clear trends from the headline conversations and themes. Clearly, passengers are asking for things that we do not seem to provide in traditional in-flight retail, such as destination services, ordering and delivery, and so on. It seems that the only thing that really resonates positively is really whiskey. But jokes aside, I think the other thing that you can see is more recently, there's a clear trend towards health, wellness, and hygiene, particularly around masks. And if I were to dig even deeper into that, the sub-trends that are influencing those headlines that you saw, and we're doing this in order to understand exactly which elements are driving the conversations around destination services, for example, or digital experiences. So what we can see is there's a strong rising demand for browsing inventories of products in flight en route to destination. Being able to plan for your in-destination dining and entertainment experiences even while you're in flight. and even expecting to have access to online shopping as part of the in-flight retail conversations. As part of the in-flight retail experience. Now, data like that can be used for predictions and recommendations, and here are just a few of them, right? So what's the point in all this social listening? It's really helping us to predict in the near to midterm what we need to do in the in-flight retail business if we are going to address the needs of our customers. It tells us that customers are not finding what they're looking for when they're in flight. Of course, there's some exceptions, but what they really expect to find is a better product range, a set of customized or personalized offers like destination services, and even better payment methods. So this is a very clear signal to airlines and in-flight retailers that if they just focus on the in-flight models a little more digitally, there could be some very easy low-hanging fruit for them to taste in the post-COVID era, when things, as we've all heard from the previous two presentations, things are going to become a lot more digital and probably even touchless. Here's the final data slide that I have. And this was interesting for me because of the focus on staff. I wanted to highlight this in particular because, when we all rush headlong into automation and digitization and robotics and all of that, I think, conversely, that people and frontline staff are going to have a disproportionately important role to play in a post-COVID future. Remember, pre-COVID, there was really two-way interaction between staff and customer. Post-COVID, you're actually likely to have three-way interactions as customers will interact with other customers. There's this whole debate going on around the equity of...
Gone. Can you just check?
Sorry, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, it's good. Sorry.
Yep, sorry. So I was going to say that in a post-COVID future, we might have three-way interactions between customers and customers. There's this debate going on about the equity of wearing masks and the equity of social distancing. If he doesn't behave or she doesn't behave, why should I? Staff are going to have an even more important role to play in situations because they're the ones representing the brand and the values on the front line. So you can see from the data here on the screen that social sentiment is almost equally positive and negative about staff, meaning that customers are not as confident in their interaction with the staff while shopping. And we saw that from Clara's presentation as well. Keep this in mind when we discuss the following issues in my presentation. So I want to talk about some of the likely consumer outcomes in relation to some of these data sets that we are seeing. There are three of them that I want to talk about very simply. Fear is going to be a very, very important thing at least in the short to medium term in a post-COVID future. I think a quick glance at our daily news feeds talks about political unrest, environmental crises, personal disposable incomes being threatened because of the economy in trouble, and so on. And it's little surprise that fear is actually on the rise globally speaking. There is also anxiety around the economy, around the state of the environment. Now, given that our customers in travel retail and particularly in-flight will be driven by a psyche of fear as jobs are lost and economies destabilize, and perhaps even Chinese are not allowed to travel or not allowed to enter certain countries, we need to be prepared that we will see lower footfalls, lower spend per head, and a general distrust in what we know as travel retail. The second big trend is quite an obvious one. I think many of us must have read about it. It's that when travel recovers, it's likely to be a bit more domestic and regional in nature. Survey after survey is showing that people are more willing to postpone long-haul travel, especially if it's discretionary, for short-haul and intra-regional and maybe even local driving or train holidays. And the last bit is really, really important. Society's shift to a digital, connected environment is going to solidify in the next 12 to 18 months. I think in the next 18 months, what we're going to see is, by certain forecasts, there will be around 29 billion connected devices in the world, which is 3 times the global population. So, people of all ages are going to be a lot more willing to transact, to browse, to search, to interact digitally. And this is a key driver of future consumer behavior. Here are some suggested, based on the data and the likely outcomes that I presented, here are some of the suggested responses for airlines, in-flight retailers, particularly in terms of their outward communications and marketing around their retail offerings. Remember, airlines will be suffering in the immediate aftermath of the recovery of revenues, right? And priorities will be driven by two key variables: availability of cash and customer expectations. And everything, right? Sanitization, food, onboard retail, services, everything will be dominated by these two conditions of cash and customer expectations. So the lack of cash will seriously hamper innovation and the trials of new business models, for example. Retailers might actually resort to discounting as the easiest tool to drive in-store footfall and conversion, but at what longer-term cost? And customers, on the other hand, as we've already heard, 60% of them are actually not even willing to come into the shops and interact with your staff for fear of exposure to the virus and to other people. So I have really three simple suggestions. The first one is really, that airlines and retailers need to consciously design for proactive empathy in an environment where everyone is going to be afraid, including your staff, by the way. It's crucial to design for new processes and for a new language and behavior in retail that's going to convey to customers that even though you're fearful, we're here to look after you, right? And our staff are trained and well trained to handle situations. So long before people actually come to the airport, there is a strong need for organizations and particularly leadership, C-level leadership, to come out in front and to display this empathy. This includes technological empathy, leadership empathy, digital empathy. So in simple terms, this could be simply designing UI and UX on e-commerce sites to be intuitive, but it goes a lot deeper than that. The most important thing about empathy is that it needs to be visible and public, and it needs to be led by the C-suite. But really, tongue-in-cheek, how do you convey warmth and a smile from behind a mask? I mean, this is actually a serious challenge. And there's a very simple solution to this, and it has nothing to do with actually being in the mask and talking to passengers. It's all about preempting, preparing, and having the mindset of getting out on social media where your customers already are, even prior to their travel. So prior to them coming to the airport, prior to being in flight, how are you priming them from a mindset perspective as to what you stand for in terms of your brand values? That's how you're going to increasingly be able to convey warmth and a smile from behind the mask. There is something else that I like to call the theater of hygiene. There's been a number of surveys done by almost everyone that you can imagine, and they all tell us pretty much the same thing, right? That travelers are expecting a show of sanitization and hygiene. And this is what I mean by the theater. So just to quote an IATA survey around passenger fears and concerns, almost 90% of everyone surveyed said they would feel safer if they actually see the sanitization being performed in an airport or in an airplane. Now, probably not in flight, but certainly through videos on social and so on. Some airlines are choosing to deck their crew out, as you see in this image here. I'm not sure this is going to help, but what's really important, to get back to the point that I made earlier, is that, as some airlines have already done, C-level executive leadership comes out to talk about this publicly and to own hygiene as something that is part of your brand ethos. The power that the C-level leadership has in conveying an airline's commitment to hygiene cannot be understated. Last but not least, I'm encouraging people and businesses that I work with and that I'm advising to move from being bland to actually being a brand. In a post-COVID environment, it's unlikely that any marketing message around luxury, your business class seats and your wonderful wines and cuisines, none of this is going to matter to anybody, right? So what can airlines and for example, even travel retailers do to stop becoming bland and instead continue to be remarkable brands that resonate with customers? Clearly, the message of the hour is cleanliness, hygiene, and wellness. And as I said before, some airlines have done this. I have not seen any travel retailers really sort of step up to this plate to come out in front of it. The airline examples I can give you: Emirates, Etihad, Delta, and so on, even United Airways in, United Airlines in the US. very few APAC airlines or APAC travel retailers seem to have come out in front and to align brands with some of these key things that are concerning customers of tomorrow. Now, I want to end off by talking very quickly about a post-COVID blueprint. Christine Martin and I, some of you may know her, we've been running a series of in-flight webinars every Monday, actually. And one of the things that we've realized is that there needs to be a stronger desire for collaboration. I think there is a desire, but it resides in pockets. And this idea behind collaboration is something that is really, really important if we were to move forward, not just in the in-flight space, but also in a travel retail space in general. I think this image that you see where we move from trolley service to self-service, this is funny because this is something actually ICAO came out today as well. ICAO actually said that airlines and airports need to promote more self-service by customers. Now, nobody can provide all of the relevant touch points for the passengers. You know, we have infrastructure, we have robotics, we have all of that, but at some point you've got to transfer the touchlessness of it back to the passenger. And one of the key changes in the behavior of travelers and the key trend that airlines and airports are, some of them at least, are preparing for now, is this new era of touchless travel. We've seen videos of how passports and boarding passes can be scanned from a distance. My own consulting discussions with engineering companies who supply to airports, for example, are showing that there's an urgent desire to move away from physical touch points to greater automation and self-service. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's also new segments of customers who have now become digital migrants who will be comfortable using their phones to order, to browse, to transact for F&B, to search for product, to consume entertainment. These are the same people who will not trust tray tables and IFE screens, but they will trust their own mobile phones. And so when I come back to the idea of the blueprint, no one airline or retailer can do any of this on their own. It comes down to the spirit of collaboration. And I like to offer this blueprint, this flower that you see on the screen, where we look at things from end to end. When we talk about collaboration, we're really talking about looking at it from traffic source to the sharing of data, right? All the way through, regardless of whether you are the airport, seaport, whether you're in the city, whether you're a plane, train, or automobile, whether you're a supplier, a distributor. How is it that we can all work together to leverage the right platforms, the right data, to offer our customers who need to be at the center of everything that we plan? Now, it's well and fine to say that we want to be digitally enabled, but really, really what's important is we need to start from the customer and work backwards, not start from the product and start from the minimum guarantees and start from the marketing fees and work forwards. That's not going to work anymore in a post-COVID future. So customer obsession is really what I want to leave everybody on this webinar with. Thank you very much for so patiently listening to me. And if there are any questions, I'll be really, really happy to deal with them. Please get in touch with me if you want to know more about the blueprint or if you want to be part of the in-flight retail webinars that we run. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Vimal. That was very, very interesting. And there was some really core themes that I think are actually you've touched on there that people are so interested to learn more about, particularly the proactive empathy, the theatre of hygiene, touchless travel, self-service, and how we marry all those together and still connect with the passengers like we did before without those physical touch points. Now, we are running a little bit over, so as much as I'd love to have another conversation with you right now, I must move on to our next presenter, who is Ramesh Kadambi. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Dubai Duty Free. He's going to talk more about the sort of practical ways that Dubai Duty Free are going to start reopening their stores. Before Ramesh, you start, as I mentioned, we are running slightly over, but I think that we can all agree that this is a topic worth spending some time on. It's going to be dominating strategies for the next 6 to 12 months and beyond. So if you can all hang on to hear Ramesh's presentation and also for the Q&A session. There are so many great questions here for every one of the speakers. And I'd also unofficially like to ask all the speakers if they wouldn't mind answering some of these questions after the webinar. Perhaps as we did with our first webinar series, we allowed the speakers to have their own time to answer the questions, and then we published the answers via our website. So if all the speakers are happy to, not putting them on the spot at all at the moment, then that would be sensational. I think all of the attendees here would really appreciate it. And also one more reminder, the full webinar will be available to view online on trbusiness.com. So for any of you who have joined late or had to leave early, or if you've had any technical issues and you weren't able to hear some of the presentations, it will be able to be viewed in full. Sorry, Ramesh, for that rambling. Now over to you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And thank you for inviting Dubai Duty Free and myself for participating in this TRConnect series. It's a fantastic series. I really enjoyed the first one. And it's absolutely great that there are hundreds of people who have registered for this event. The last three speakers really set the stage for what I'm going to talk about in terms of what Dubai Duty Free has done in preparation for the COVID crisis and the reopening, and all the work that Mindset has done in terms of tapping into what consumers are thinking about at this point in time, what are the things that can be done digitally that Alan spoke about, and the passion and the enthusiasm which Vimal spoke about, the need for empathy and the need to be thinking about the customer's fears are all extremely relevant to what I'll be talking about for the next 20 minutes or so. So what I'll do is I'll go through a presentation, and I'll first talk about our retail outlook for the next few months. I'll talk about some of the steps that we have taken in terms of the COVID crisis and the mitigation, and what our plan is for reopening our shops. So I'll switch you to my screen, and I hope that all of you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can see you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thank you. So in terms of the outlook, as you all know, this has been a very fluid situation. Last year in November, when I spoke at the MedFi event, I was asked either by John Rimmer or Dermot David as to what my outlook was for 2020. And my answer was that it was cloudy with a chance of sunshine. And as luck would have it, the situation is, of course, very different from that. And we started experiencing the first effects of the COVID crisis towards the end of January. And I think I first spoke publicly about it on the 27th or 28th of January. And in the beginning, we thought that it's about a $100 million hit to our business. And then as February went on, we realized the seriousness of the problem. By the beginning of March, we thought it's a $300, $400 million hit. And then our shops finally stopped operating on the 25th of March. And by the middle of March, we knew the hit that we are going to take in terms of our business. So just to put it in context, as of today, we are 52% down on what we were last year. And we have done about $400 million in business so far, and we are down a little bit more than $400 million at the moment. And during this time, from the 25th of March till today, the 2nd of June, we have been thinking about life after we reopen our shops and in this post-COVID world. And we started working on it in a tangible way in April of this year, around the 20th of April. And we looked at our shop floor operations, we looked at our back office operations, we looked at how we deal with the staff, we looked at various things across the company, and we put together a plan that will increase the safety for our passengers, for our customers, and how to reopen, whenever we have the opportunity to reopen. So one thing I want to emphasize at this stage is that our shops are all closed, and we are not operating any of our shops, even for the repatriation flights that have happened in April and May. And as we go through the presentation, I'll tell you what the plans are and when we expect to reopen our retail areas. Now, as Vimal was saying in his presentation, the staff and their safety for us was absolutely paramount. Since the 25th of March, we have had cases where our staff tested positive for COVID, and thankfully, at this point in time, we have only a handful of our staff, literally 6 people who are symptomatic, and we think about all the staff who went through that situation every day. So whatever I'm going to speak about in terms of mitigation and in terms of safety, it has a very personal, connection to us, and we are very, very keen to protect our staff and to protect our customers. Because we know that the frontline staff who are out there who are dealing with the passengers are exposed to a variety of situations, and COVID being one of them. And just to put that in context, between the 21st of January, when the crisis first began, till the 25th of March, when the shops shut down, 10 million passengers went to Dubai airport. So our staff have seen a lot of passengers go through during the crisis, and we'll see passengers go through once the shops reopen. And I'll of course finish off with the plan for the reopening. So in terms of the business itself, we, as I mentioned, we did about $400 million until now. And the reason I'm showing you this slide, where it gives you the breadth of the business, in terms of which regions it comes from, it really illustrates where Dubai is in the heart of the world, or in the heart of the east to west traffic. So between Europe, Far East, Middle East, our business is fairly balanced and the Indian subcontinent, between those 4 major geographies, and then we have business from Africa, from Russia, and so on. So when you have a situation like this, where your business is coming from a wide variety of destinations, and where Emirates is flying to more than 150 destinations, the freedom to travel and the freedom to leave countries and the freedom to land in different countries is extremely important. And today you have a situation where something like 150 airports in the world have some form of restriction or the other in terms of either entry or exit of passengers. So that's what makes it very difficult when you're a retail operator in a hub airport like Dubai. And this slide in terms of distribution tells you the challenge. So for the remainder of the year, after we have done the 400 million or so in US dollars in the first quarter, we think that we will do maybe another 200 to 300 million dollars over the rest of the year, depending on how the passenger forecasts play out. So in terms of a low forecast, we think we'll finish the year with about $600 million. And in terms of a higher forecast, we think we might finish at about $800 or $900 million. But a lot of it depends on the roadblocks, or not the roadblocks, but the blocks to international movement of people being eased and people being able to travel easily. So keeping that in mind, in terms of what to expect in terms of business, I'll tell you now about how we were thinking about the COVID crisis in April. So the first thing that we did was we set out a list of objectives around the 20th of April. And we said we want to mitigate the risk of transmission between shoppers and between the shoppers. We wanted to protect our staff, and we wanted to reassure our staff that we are taking all the measures that are needed. Now, in my presentation, I'll mostly focus on the first point, which is the mitigation of the risk to the shoppers, and tell you the things that we're doing. But I really want to emphasize that in terms of the staff, we are doing a lot of work from the time that they leave their apartment till the time that they reach their place of work, and when they're at work, to improve their safety and to improve the hygiene and improve their overall situation as much as possible, and also to communicate that to them. But my presentation really is focused today on what we're doing on the front office, or on the shop floor side of our operation. And I also want to say at this stage that we were able to take our retail shops. We have about 180 shops across both the airports and about 40,000 square meters of space. and take a look at them and then see how to modify it in order to meet the guidelines. And as far as the guidelines themselves go, you have to remember that we started this work in the 3rd week of April. At that time, the guidelines were being formulated by different authorities, including the local authorities. And the Dubai government came out with its guidelines towards the 3rd week of April for retail operations. And most of my presentation and the work we have done complies with the local guidelines and with the UAE guidelines. Later on, with the work of ICAO or all the work that has been done by DFWC and so on, if the guidelines change for travel retail, we can comply with it. But everything that I'm saying today really refers to our compliance with the local guidelines, and we are very confident that whenever the guidelines change, that we can adapt to it. So I'll show you very broadly, what were the areas that we looked at. The first was within the shop itself, access control. How do you, having a clear entry point into a shop, clear exit point. Now I realize that ETRC and DFWC have been talking, to ICAO and to others, and also telling them that in many respects, having clear entry and exit points might increase congestion. So we are not really taking a philosophical position on that debate, but what we are saying is that today we have designed our flow to meet with a situation where there are clear entry and exit points, but we can of course modify it later on. And in terms of the hygiene, all the sanitizer stations and other things, the protection in terms of plexiglass screens and all that I'll go through, and also the stuff that we have done on the operation side, when to replenish the stocks, how to manage queues, in-store sanitation, the possibility of having a concierge shopping service and contactless payments, all of which I'll talk about. So if you look at the first shop that I have presented here, it's a liquor and tobacco shop in Concourse B West. And it's a shop that's about 739 square meters in size. And what we did was we created a situation where we have a main entrance point here, this green arrow. We have created blocks or cubes, and in each cube they effectively have one person. We have arrows that mark the direction in which you traveled in, and we have designed the arrows such that you can navigate the whole shop. You can see all the fixtures, you can see all the gondolas. Whoever is buying something, we expect them to come out of the shop through the cash counters. And if you're not buying something and if you want to exit, we have a way of giving you that exit. And then we have digital screens for communication. I'll show you some examples of that. And all these markings, all this work in terms of looking at the flow, all of it has been done. And we have also identified the capacity of this shop, because that's one of the questions that will keep coming up during this presentation and others, which is if you implement the social distancing guidelines, then what happens to your shop floor capacity? Because capacity then becomes a fixed item. So in this particular shop, for example, you can only have 74 people in there. If your guideline says it's one person for every 10 square meters. You can have 60 people if you want to meet the 2-meter distance guideline. And in order to meet the 2-meter distance guideline, we also had the clever idea of forcing every passenger to use a trolley so that there is physical distance between them and the next passenger. And you can do that in a shop like this. So capacity will start to become more and more important. And when you say 74 people in this shop, it includes the staff. So in many respects, as the business starts to increase and the business starts to get better, each staff member that you have in the shop is one less passenger that you can have in the shop if the guidelines continue. So in the next screen, I'll show you a picture of the communication, that says one trolley per shopper, so that it's very clear that that is the case. Then in this picture, you can see the floor markings, and the arrows, in terms of coming in. Just ignore and the flow within the shop. And I show you another picture of the Jack Daniels column where you can see the markings on the floor in greater detail, which tells you that if you're standing, what is the space to keep. All these yellow lines have all been placed in the shop. This is in Concourse B West. The arrows are there. The shop is fully merchandised and it's all ready to go in that sense, So this was an example in liquor and tobacco, which is a high volume, high transaction shop. Another similar shop like this is Food Plus, where you have similar considerations, where you have digital screens in the beginning, you have a clear entrance, you have a flow through the shop, you have exits, and you force people to use the trolleys. And I'll show you a picture of the implementation. This shop has a capacity for about 61 people. And this is how it actually looks, when you see it. And we are able to use the digital screens in these across the shop to message the customers, saying sanitize hand regularly, or the message our staff, or whatever it is that we wish to do. This shop was recently refurbished, so we were able to put in these digital screens, and now we are able to use them for the purpose of messaging on the COVID. So from the point of view of Dubai Duty Free, the communication to the staff and the communication to the passengers is very, very important, in addition to doing all the work that we're doing. You can see here the no entry sign, so we really don't want someone to enter the shop when others are exiting. We have the trolley bay, and we have all this ready and prepared. The next example that I wanted to show you is in perfumes and cosmetics, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this is one of the shops that I think will cause us difficulty in the future. If you take a Concourse, D shop, where we have a massive perfume shop of about 1,300 square meters, the capacity that you could have there is about 130 people inside the shop. So if you have 130 people inside the shop, during peak times in February, for example, we would have had about 500, 550 people go through the shop in 1 hour. And we would have had a population of about 70, 80 staff within the shop servicing the customers, beauty advisors and brand ambassadors and so on. Now that kind of a model where you have a large number of employees inside the store servicing the passengers will become very difficult in the new environment where you're trying to impose social distancing. And I just want to leave that thought, for the brand, for those from the brands who are listening, and also to leave the thought for other retailers that if, as the mindset, as Clara's presentation said, and as Vimal also referred to it, if the passengers do not want proximity with the staff, if the passengers do not want to touch the products, and we want to sell it to them, then the previous model of having these beauty advisors comes under threat, with the additional problem now of capacity, that the more BAs you have and the more employees you have, the less customers that you can have in the shop. I don't think this will be a problem in the beginning because the traffic will ramp up slowly, but later on, this will increasingly get to be an issue. And retailers like us will have to make hard decisions about staffing and make hard decisions about brand ambassadors in the context of the capacity of the staff that we can, on the people that we can have in the shop itself. This is just an example of communication in a small shop at your service, which we are planning to open soon. And more examples of communication from our control tower, shop around the control tower in Concourse C. Only handle the items that you wish to purchase, just messaging the customers in terms of communications. And these are all just examples of what we are doing. Then we also will, of course, emphasize contactless payments. I wanted to say that at the moment, in terms of credit card transactions, we are doing about 45% of our transactions using cards and about 55% using cash in terms of number of transactions, not in terms of value. In terms of value, it is about 60-40, the other way around. But within the 45% of the transactions that are done using cards, more than 40% of it is contactless. So we have made good progress with contactless, whether it is Apple Pay, Google Pay, Alipay, and all of these, different forms. But we are pleased that we are already at a 20% of overall transactions that are contactless, and that 40% of the transactions of credit cards are contactless. So that is, so we are moving in the right direction as far as contactless is concerned. And we'll also focused on concierge shopping. It's a bit ironic that we launched a concierge shopping service in Concourse in Concourse A in the business class lounge just before the COVID crisis happened. And it was a full-fledged service. You just come into the lounge, you meet a sales assistant, you tell them what you want, and the items get picked up and they get delivered while you're waiting in the lounge. But soon after that, the lounge closed and the concourse closed, and the service in reality did not have as much of an uptake as what we expected. So now we are repurposing the concierge service, and what we are saying to passengers is that if someone doesn't want to enter the shop and go through the navigation in terms of the arrows and buy something and come out, and if they just want to do it for one item, if they don't want the whole journey, then we will help them by having this desk. Somebody walks up to it, asks for what they want, and the person runs and gets it and completes the transaction. So it's a simple service, and we will see how the uptake of this is as we go along. With many of the things that I've said till now in terms of flow, in terms of entry, exit, concierge shopping, communication, it is all a learning situation for us. We do not at all pretend that we know everything about the situation, and we don't pretend that we can exactly predict how the customers will behave. But after we open our shops, and once we get going, then we will know whether some of these ideas work or not, and then we can adapt to it accordingly. The last aspect that I want to touch upon a little bit is the digital side. And in terms of digital, we were happy that the total number of sessions on our website didn't drop that much. We're doing about 500,000 sessions a month. And as you can see from the stats, people are spending about 3.5 minutes on the site. This is in spite of the fact that there are no flights, in spite of the fact that none of our shops are open, but we're still getting traffic on our website. And when you go to our website, you have a couple of options. You can either buy tickets or you can do home delivery specials and click and collect. And I'll talk about this briefly. We have had a very, very successful promotion, as many of you know, called Millionaire and Finest Surprise, and we have made more than 350 millionaires, and 1,700 cars have been raffled. So that is continuing on our main website, on our DubaiDutyFree.com website. What we also did was that after the crisis started, we created a very sort of quick website in about 6 weeks' time to sell some products into the local market. So we have done that as a pilot with our own employees, and next week we are going to roll it out. We were going to roll out this service to the people in Dubai and the UAE, and this site will have about 1,300 items, and it will be available for home delivery, and we'll see what kind of a pickup we get. But what I'm pleased about it is that all our internal departments, marketing, purchasing, IT, logistics, operations, finance, all of us got together very quickly, and in about 6 weeks' time, we rolled out this particular service. And we'll see how that pans out. But on our main website, on the Dubai Duty Free website, we had started about 2.5 years ago another digital journey where we really wanted to focus on the functionality of the site, on marketing, on customer engagement. We did a lot of work on this prior to the crisis, and we created a strong email engine using this product called Responses. We got into DMP and better targeting of our customers, better segmentation, and because we did all that, we were able to run a whole bunch of campaigns, including campaigns on products and stuff before the crisis started. And after the crisis, we used the same database, that we have of about 300,000 customers to run email campaigns on our Finest Surprise and Millionaire promotion. And I'm pleased to say that that campaign was very successful. We ran 2 email shots of Millionaire, and we were able to triple the business on a daily basis after we ran the email. So the investment that we made in 2018 and 2019 in terms of marketing, in terms of the email database, in terms of DMP, in terms of revamping the website, all of that stuff paid off when we had this crisis, and we are able to repurpose our online offer, and we are happy about that. So that was a high-speed look at what we have done in terms of mitigation for COVID, and a little bit of work on the customer engagement side, on the digital side. I'm very conscious of the fact that from everything that you heard, from Clara, from Alan, and from Vimal, that a company like Dubai Duty Free or any retailer has a lot of work to do on the digital side and customer engagement. But I do feel that we are on the right track. Today's webinar and listening to the other speakers has given me a long things to do list of stuff that I should be working on, but at least we're on the right track. We have the right platform. We have a fantastic team of employees at Dubai Duty Free. We have great leadership in Mr. McLaughlin, as the Executive Vice Chairman and CEO. We have a fantastic senior management team. And with all of that, we should be able to do the things that we are doing, we should be doing on the customer engagement side. So I'll finish my presentation with the plan for reopening of the shops. What I want to say to you is that the small bits of the COVID mitigation that I presented and all the work that we are doing on the staff safety and other areas, which I didn't get into in detail, but which are very important, all of that culminated in us presenting to the authorities our plans for a safe operation of Dubai Duty Free. So we made the presentations before the Eid holidays, and then I'm very pleased to say that this afternoon at 4 p.m. Dubai time, an inspection was finished of our operations and by the General Department of Civil Aviation, and they are generally happy with all the measures that we have taken, and now we await a formal approval for the reopening of our shops. If we get the formal approval for the reopening soon, then our plan is to work in this manner. We will first open Concourse B West, the west side of the Concourse. That is the side that you walk to when you enter Concourse B and you go towards Concourse C. So in that, we have a food plus shop, we have an electronics shop, we have perfumes, cosmetics, pharmacy at your service, and our final supplies and millennium counter, and the customer service and exchange. So we'll first open those shops, and then we'll see how that progresses. And then immediately after that, and as quickly as possible, we'll open the arrival shop in Terminal 3 and then open the Terminal 2 shops, because many of the repatriation flights by the other airlines, by non-Emirates, are all going out of Terminal 2, and we are not really able to meet the needs of the passenger there. So we are anxious and keen to open the shops in T2. After that is done, we would then look at the other side of Concourse B, the east side, where we have gold, we have jewelry, we have watches, we have the big perfume shop, we have another liquor, tobacco, food plus. We'll also look at the boutiques like Chanel and Gucci, and see those how to reopen those shops. Then look at Concourse C as the traffic builds up. Emirates has a clear strategy that they want to focus first on Concourse B and use Concourse B to the maximum in terms of aircraft movements before they get to Concourse C. At the same time, we also know that many of the other carriers are keen to fly into Concourse D, and if and when Concourse D opens, we'll open our shops there, and then we'll open the second arrival shop we have in Terminal 3. The date that we really don't know about is Concourse A and AMIA. From the forecasts that we have seen, and from the amount of business and the traffic movement that's likely to happen in the airport, we are not sure that Concourse A will actually open this year. It may open or it may not open, depending on EK's requirements, and we are prepared for that eventuality. And we also see it very unlikely that Al Maktoum International Airport will open until the end of the year. So those two locations, we have put it as to be determined, but we are clear in our plans about CB West. It should happen any day in the next few days. We are clear about the Terminal 3 and Terminal 2 departures, and we are clear about Concourse B and the others in the third phase. As an organization, we are very confident in terms of our ability to execute many of the things that I told you. We are confident about our financial ability. We have a strong balance sheet. We are not leveraged, and we can meet whatever commitments come in front of us. So from an organizational perspective, I'm very confident about the future. From a traffic perspective, it will be what it will be. And there are many thoughts, many ideas, many views about whether passengers will spend, whether they will not spend. But I think as executives and as leaders of organizations, we just need to focus on what we can control. And what we can control is to put the right plans in place, execute them properly, and then see what happens in the future. I hope that was useful, and thank you very much. And thank you again, Michael and Charlotte, for this opportunity and for having this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you, Ramesh. Sorry, Michael, I think you were about to say something about our timing issue.
I was just saying to say thank you, Ramesh, but also just to say that we are running over, but it's amazing. We've still got 4/5 of the attendees who originally registered and signed in from the beginning still with us. So there is a huge amount of interest in these topics. They're crucial to the business today. And there's lots of questions coming in, so we do really want to press on and get into the interactive Q&A with our speakers. And thank you, Ramesh, for sharing all that really breaking news information with us live on this webinar. Charlotte, over to you.
So yeah, without further ado, I'd like to begin the Q&A. I think we're going to bring all the speakers back onto their web cameras, so hopefully they'll all successfully be able to come onto camera shortly. I actually had a question for you, Ramesh, just so we crack on with this question time. Firstly, I'd like to say that I think we've mission accomplished basically from this webinar. If Ramesh Kadambi has learned a lot and has a long list of actionable items from this webinar today, then yeah, basically I think we've done our job, and that's amazing. And I think, well, I know there's so many other people that are listening here today that will feel the same way. I wanted to touch on something you talked about, the altering of the store layout, obviously, and the signage in store to accommodate the new guidelines, social distancing, etc. I thought it was particularly interesting you mentioned the number of staff in store that will be possible if we want to maximize the number of actual customers in store. And this may be more of a problem further down the line when we do have an increase in passengers and the number of BAs, brand ambassadors, will not be in the same number as retailers have been used to. What do you think about the idea of virtual retail ambassadors mooted in Alan's excellent presentations? Do you think this may be an option, and potentially virtual brand ambassadors too?
Yeah. Firstly, Alan's a very good friend, so let me be careful about what I say. Now, the thing with virtual brand ambassadors, see, there are two issues here. One is that so far, people are used to contact with the brand ambassadors, and many of the customers have actually developed relationships with the brand ambassadors, and they know them, especially the people who fly frequently, and they are in continuous contact with them. So there's a degree of relationship, there's a degree of familiarity and degree of knowledge that the brand ambassadors have. The virtual stuff may work, but what I'm skeptical about is that if you are trying to reduce contact, and if contact is the main issue, it's hard to access these devices without contact, and it is hard from a hygiene point of view to keep these devices safe, if hygiene is a factor. So there's a bit of a contradiction in customers saying that they want to go virtual, they want to do this, they want to do that. If they want to go virtual, and if they're going to get assistance for it from the retailer or from the brand, I don't see how you can do that in a safe way with so much of emphasis on hygiene. But it's like everything else, Charlotte. It's like, will it be part of the future? It will be. Will it be a huge part of the future? I don't know. It's like what Arthur Clarke said famously 40 years ago. He said the future is already here, but it's in little islands that you don't see. So I think the virtual reality, the augmented reality is all part of the present. And I think more than the retailers like us, the brands will drive that process. If the brand can come up with a safe way to showcase their products or to interact with the customers using VR, the retailers will be happy to help with that adoption.
Alan, would you like to respond on that? I'm sure you will.
Of course. Look, as Ramesh highlighted, there's a lot of well-trained, very experienced brand ambassadors. The point is that when we talk about virtual assistants, it doesn't necessarily mean using avatars, AI-driven avatars, to engage with customers outside of the store, online, or in the store. Actually, you can have engagement using your staff remotely by actual using it online, and that can be activated through the smartphone. So there's actually, the technology already exists today where an actual customer can actually have an engagement with a virtual assistant, or actually through the retailer's app engage with a brand ambassador who's actually not standing in front of them, but actually is remote. So they can still empower a lot of the selling techniques and so on, but also help them from a navigation point of view, because as demonstrated from all the good work that Ramesh highlighted and the team have highlighted, navigation is going to be a challenge, particularly with the self-distancing as well. So the good news, Ramesh, is the technology exists today. I'd be delighted to share with you how it can be done through the actual customer smartphone without actually having the physical contact, and ultimately, you know, still have a great experience.
Thanks for that, Alan. Just touching on some of the other things you said, Ramesh, just there about removing the contact and creating more of a touchless journey, and these are the things that Vimal also pointed out. In fact, all of you did, and the fact that there are the hygiene concerns with any touchscreen. You know, we can talk about more digital innovation and such, but there is still you know, shared contact, which people are very nervous about. Now, Vimal, you did mention that mobile phones, however, people are willing to trust their mobile phones more than they are, you know, shared screens, quite obviously. And I think it was in Clara's presentation, she said that 84% would respond positively to an app or a QR code on their smartphones, which again provides more evidence of that. So should we be leveraging mobile technology more rather than relying too heavily on the shared touchscreens and the iPads in store? Does that, and how, and on the reverse of that, does that pose more challenges, GDPR or privacy, etc., etc.? That's a question for me.
I think from my perspective, when I talk about digital, first of all, I'm really referring to it as omni-channel. The second piece is most of it increasingly is going to come through your mobile phone. There is no doubt about it, because nobody carries a laptop and walk around. We're not using iPads and walking around. We're all using our phones when we walk around and when we shop, right? Particularly in an airport when we're walking around. So I think the mobile phone, to answer your question very, very directly, the mobile phone is going to be the screen or the portal of choice for anything related to search, browse, buy, engage, consume, entertain, right? But more importantly, around digital, it's not just about you know, the portals and the websites and all of that. It's really, digital does something that I think even I actually neglected to mention in my presentation, but it's a core part of it. Digital allows you to actually reach your customer, and this kind of talks to Ramesh's point about his email campaigns. Digital allows you to reach your customer long before and long after they've actually traveled. That's the key point about digital, because it allows you to track, target, and retarget. And that's the key point about digital.
Excellent, thank you for that. I just wanted to highlight the fact that if those that have had to leave for whatever reason, because we obviously are running over, I would hope to say that some of our speakers, or all our speakers, would be happy to answer some of these questions that are still coming in after the webinar, as in, you know, just in email form. That would be splendid. I think everyone would really appreciate that. Again, we can talk about that afterwards, but just to reassure those that are perhaps having to leave us now. There are a lot of people that were interested in the cost implications of implementing digital, VR, AR, and especially having to bring it on quickly. I think people are sort of thinking, are we going to need to do this for long term? And if we aren't, then is there much point in investing in this technology now? I think that's a good question for Alan to start off with.
The simple answer is yes, they need to invest. You know, if you look at how digital is being used by all of us, individuals in domestic market, as well as in other channels. So I think, you know, the challenge for brands and retailers today is there's such a depth and breadth of different digital solutions out there that it can be overwhelming. And this is why I sort of focus very clearly on tech that can be implemented quickly and at low cost. So, you know, some of the tech that we showed, for example, the bringing the sort of online experience much more animated, the modeling that I showed can be done within a day, depending on the assets that are provided by the brand owner. And the animation as well can be done in the same day. And that can be turned around very, very quickly and at very, very low cost. You know, in some cases, depending on the complexity of the design, for less than 150 euros. The NFC, which I think is an absolutely key part, and it's technology that's been around for a number of years, and we all use it through our contactless credit card and debit card. It's an obvious one to go after, and it's very low cost. Each of those tabs, depending on the antenna and the data capacity, you know, only cost anything between 15 and 20 cents each. Obviously, the programming and the content behind it is where the additional cost is. So the key point is that do you need to be looking at your digital strategy? Absolutely. Think about short term, meaning between now and the next 12 months, and how do you build on that going forward in terms of the next 2 to 3 years and 5 years, because certainly technology is moving very, very quickly, driven by the gaming industry. So, you know, those who neglect digital, or if it's not part of their strategy, and I agree totally that it needs to be part of an integrated omni-line strategy, you know, I really do fear for them in the long term. So key, you need to think digital. It's not at the expense of physical. The two can exist and can be integrated, and certainly travelers, customers of today and tomorrow will be wanting more integrated customer experiences.
It's interesting. I actually like to do one final poll. I know we're really short on time, Michael, but it's the fourth and final one. Just skipping over the third one, and hopefully you can locate that. Sorry to pull that up now, but it just seemed particularly pertinent. How will in-store communications need to evolve? If everyone could have a look at the poll in front of them now. Increased interactive digital signage, augmented reality applications with tablets and smartphones, virtual reality applications with 3D glasses, VR goggles, or will there be no change? Thanks for voting. Michael, I think you can provide an update on the number that
we've got about a quarter have voted so far, so we'll leave it on for a little while. And it's neck and neck with increased digital signage and augmented reality at the moment.
Interesting. Perhaps people's attitudes and opinions have changed after listening to the next speakers today.
So we're just coming up to the halfway mark. We're going to leave it for another 5 seconds. So make your vote. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's close the poll. See the results.
Okay, so 62% said there will definitely be an increase in interactive digital signage, and 57% augmented reality applications with tablets and smartphones. Interesting. Virtual reality applications with 3D glasses, VR goggles. 8% of you believe that in-store communications need to evolve in this way, and 4% believe they won't need, that in-store communications don't need to evolve. Interesting. Well, those are indeed illuminating results, and it would have been interesting to poll perhaps at the beginning and then right at the end to see if people's opinions really had been changed. I do have a question from the audience. It's from Giles Marks at Maui Gym. He says, this is for Ramesh. Is there a formula that retailers are now using to determine what's the estimated percentage of traffic, footfall decrease post-COVID versus pre-COVID, and how does that translate to estimated productivity, revenue decrease that will be generated? That's quite a long question, but hopefully you can pull it apart.
Thank you to the listener for the question. At the moment, we are sort of in the, when you talk about the 5 stages of grief, we are getting out of the, the phase of depression and getting to the point of accepting what the reality is in terms of the passenger traffic and the passenger numbers and so on. At this point in time, do we know, what is going to happen in terms of, conversion? We don't really know. We knew that our penetration was relatively high before COVID, but we have no idea because we haven't opened our stores yet what it's going to be after COVID. So what we have done effectively is that we have looked at the economic impact of the COVID crisis, the recession, across many geographies, depression in some geographies, the reduction in the travel, the reduction in the business travel, and so on, and reduced the average spend that we expect from the passengers who will come over the next few months, and reduce our expectations in terms of our business. But there's no real, formula that's going to tell us until we open. After we open, and let's say we have 4 weeks of experience or 6 weeks of experience or 8 weeks of experience, then we will know very quickly, is the passenger behavior similar to what it was before the crisis, or is there a drop? Because anecdotally, when you speak to other retailers in the region who have operated their shops for repatriation flights, you get very different responses. For some people, for some of the retailers were saying today in our Medford board meeting, for example, that passengers going to the UK or Paris were actually, they had a higher spend than before, whereas passengers going to the Indian subcontinent had extremely low spend when compared to before. So the repatriation flights, are difficult to use as a judge. So we need the normal flights to come back before we can really think about these things. But it will have a severe impact on our turnover. It will have a severe impact on our profitability. As organizations, we are not sized for this kind of a dramatic drop. Now, we as a company, we are sized to handle 90 million passengers a year in our airports. So if we are going to handle 30 million passengers this year or 40 million passengers this year, it's a dramatic shift. And not to forget the fact that even if we do 40 million passengers, we have already done 18 million passengers in the first 3 months. So you're only talking about another 22 million passengers for the rest of the year, no? So I think it will play out over a period of time, and it's not easy to estimate all those things in the degree with any precision, that the questioner asked.
Okay, thank you very much for that honest answer, Ramesh. I think people will appreciate that. Just to address a group of questions, people are asking some information about your presentation, for some granular detail. But I'd like to just reiterate that all presentations will be available to view online. So I think some of the things that people are asking about were actually mentioned in your presentation, but because we had to go through them at a reasonable pace, they may have missed them. So please be assured that, again, the webinar will be available in full to view and the presentations will be available to download. Michael, do you have any questions from our audience members that you wish to flag at this point?
Yeah, coming back.
Can I just add something very quickly? I promise I won't take too long. So this whole idea about not knowing what's going to happen, I think Ramesh is absolutely right. Nobody knows, right? But here's the thing, and here's why digital and engaging customers even before they travel or before they physically come to the airport becomes important, because that gives you an opportunity to now tell people, remember, people are not coming to airports to shop, they're coming to airports to take a flight, right? It's very different from people going to a shopping mall, because when you go to a shopping mall, you're going to shop. You have an intention to shop, you have a plan, you have a list, and so on and so forth. When you go to an airport, your intention is not shopping. And so that nudge is needed for customers, that nudge is needed for passengers. And this is why targeting them in a way that is relevant multiple times before they actually end up at the airport, when they're at the airport, and after they land becomes so important. Because if your business has fallen from 90 to 40 million, you now need to convert more percentages of that 40 million in order to make your business viable. This is the key behind digitalization.
There was actually a question for Maria Daniela Bracco, I think that's how you pronounce her name, who did say, do you plan to start engaging with customers prior to their arrival to the airport in the online check-in, for example? She said, and I'm guessing that was a question for Ramesh.
we are definitely targeting them earlier, through the work that we are doing on the DMP, but not specifically at this point in time during the online check-in process. So we have started a conversation with Emirates, because Emirates is 55% of our traffic, and we are trying to see what we can do with them in terms of advancing the contact point. But as in terms of our online effort, in terms of our digital strategy, we definitely in the last 2 years have moved to contacting them earlier and earlier in the passenger journey.
Okay. Sorry, Michael, I promised that you could speak and then took that away from you.
No problem. No problem. It's great to let the speakers carry on though. Yeah, well, coming back to one of the first presentation from Clara, a few questions coming in about the difference across different regions and different nationalities. Do you see any major differences, above average scores for different nationalities in this particular research?
Yeah, of course, there were a lot of differences between regions. I think there's two ways we can look at this. The first one is driven by how people shop and how they used to shop. Of course, we have some nationalities. I'm going to mention the Chinese because I think it's a nationality that a lot of us care a lot about. They used to plan their shopping in advance a lot. They used to have shopping lists. So they were very likely to use what we call pre-trip touch points. And we expect that that trend is going to continue growing even stronger. So they are, for example, a key target for brands, for retailers to engage before the trip. Now, when it comes to concerns inside the store, when it comes to changing behavior inside the store, what we've seen is that it changes a lot depending on the regions based on the stage in which they are in the pandemic. If we look at European markets where slowly things are opening up now, people are more and more going to a normal life, they're more likely to expect to start traveling soon. They're more likely to expect to start shopping again. Whereas if we focus on the Americas, and especially in Latin America, where the peak of the pandemic is still happening right now, it seems like for them it's still much more farther away. So it really depends on the mindset in which they are. But overall, this interest in digitalization and in online touchpoints is a trend that we've seen very stable globally.
Thanks, Clara. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, for those who weren't with us from the very start, the next edition of TRConnect webinar is going to be specifically on China and the much anticipated return of the Chinese passenger. So there'll be more in-depth insights on the Chinese from mindset in that particular edition. Charlotte, if I may, just moving on, segueing into the different nationalities, a question for Ramesh and Vimal. What kind of training do you expect to be putting in place for the staff, the brand ambassadors, the sales associates, to deal with the cultural differences? Because obviously, the Chinese are going to react very differently to the Indians, to the Westerners, to the Americans, to the Europeans, to Latin Americans, Africans, and so on, with regards to the social distancing, sales associates wearing masks. There's a different level of fear factor from one nationality to another. So are you implementing training programs that take into account all those aspects? Ramesh, let's start with you.
The first thing, Vimal, from our point of view is that we have 45 nationalities working for us, in Dubai Duty Free. So we have 900 Chinese staff, we have and so on. We have many different nationalities. So the training program that our Human Resources Department has put in place, for the staff in terms of the COVID mitigation, basically takes into account the cultural differences that are there amongst the employees, amongst their own nationalities, and how best to coach them and help them to navigate through this new situation, because it is not normal. What social distancing asks you to do is not normal in a work environment. That you should be physically separate from staff. You shouldn't sit close to them in a break room. When you're walking with them, you keep your distance. And for people who work with each other, day in and day out, it's not natural. So at the moment, our focus has been very much on the staff, training them and helping them to make sure that they protect themselves. And then as the airport opens up and as we start getting these nationalities coming in, we'll adapt, the messaging and the communication and the behavior of our staff to meet those. because a lot of the work in terms of security, in terms of safety, when you welcome passengers is also done by Dubai airports. So Dubai airports is equally conscious about it, and they're equally conscious that the passengers do what is expected of them, whether it's wearing masks or other things like that. And then when they are within our retail areas, we just need to deal with them with sensitivity, which we have been doing all these years. We have 36 years of experience, dealing with 150 different nationalities, and 90 million people. So I think we'll adapt as we go along. But right now, our focus has been more on our own employees and teaching them how to be safe.
Okay. And Fimal, with the clients you're working with, is this an aspect?
Yeah, I've been working with 2 clients, specifically working out training content for staff, as Ramesh was talking, but also getting down into the granular detail of, what kind of lexicon do you have to bring into your new daily use, right? So language is one key part of it. But I have to say, particularly to the 2 nationalities that you picked out, Michael, the Indians and the Chinese, I think rather unfairly and maybe even tongue-in-cheek, these guys are predisposed to handling post-COVID very well. I'll tell you why. Indians have this, right, as a greeting. No need to shake hands. And Chinese people generally don't hug people in public and so on. So I think, and jokes aside, I think, over here in Hong Kong, for example, we've been wearing masks for years, ever since SARS happened back in 2003. The minute you've got a cold, everybody puts a mask on, right? So mask or no mask, I think we figured out how to navigate that whole, how do I display warmth from behind a mask thing, with your body language, with your lexicon, with the way that you stand, with your heads, your physical body and so on. And I think a lot of this is now going to be, as Ramesh also alluded to, it's going to be a bit of trial and error. Let's try this. Let's see if it works. Let's see how customers are responding. Let's see whether NPS scores go up. Let's see what the feedback is and so on, right? But yes, that's a very key part of the whole game post-COVID.
Yeah, being married to a French person myself, then you can imagine the bees, the huggy kissy culture that we're entrenched in is obviously gets some very strange stares here in Australia for sure. Thanks you for Vimal and Ramesh for those answers. And Charlotte, over to you.
Yeah, so I think again we're just conscious of the time and how people need to be moving on with their day. But there was a couple more questions. Perhaps this one for Clara. You mentioned that the increase in anxiety and how emotional society has become as a whole. And also the fact that there's 21% of passengers are used to testing and sampling products. So I guess those are 2 separate issues. The first one, how do we, I guess, not take advantage, but how do we address those sort of fear, the anxiety and emotion, the heightened emotion of passengers now? And secondly, 21% again said that they enjoy the testing and the sampling of products. How do you think those passengers in particular can be addressed in an alternative way?
I think it's really a fine balance. Once travelers get to the airport, if they see that the appropriate measures are in place, like for example everything that Ramesh was sharing about what's being placed in Dubai, that will contribute to reassure them. But at the same time, we have to remember that the shopping experience needs to be pleasant, needs to be engaging. So if we make it too, let's say, too strict with the rules, and we leave no room for innovation, we leave no room for enjoyment, then of course that will not help with that anxiety. So it's really finding that balance between making the rules clear, yet not making it too strict. When it comes to testing, I think it's really one of the aspects that will be the most challenging, because it's the one thing that we cannot do with digital. We cannot share the taste, we cannot share the smell. So of course there were those ideas that we tested with the robots, for example, which would spray the fragrance on you without having to touch it. So I think that it's the same as we see in all industries, as we see in our daily life. It's about rethinking everything that we were doing and how to adapt it to make it safe yet enjoyable.
Of course, yes. And there was a couple of questions surrounding the, just lost the, sorry, bear with me. Michael, while I just try and find what I was looking for, do you have any other audience questions that you wanted to flag?
There's so many coming in. It's difficult to choose the right one. Ramesh, there are a few questions about click and collect. Will you be implementing more click and collect posts around the airport?
Yeah, absolutely. The click and collect, business went through evolution, right? Earlier when we had the click and collect before COVID, we did the fulfillment from the shops, So people selected the item they wanted. We had a mechanism by which somebody went to the shop, picked the item, and they put it in a bag, and had it ready for a passenger to collect, and the passenger made the payment online. But then when we closed the shops, we could no longer fulfill from the shops, so we modified the click and collect to do the fulfillment from the warehouse and then have the items ready for the passenger when he's leaving on these repatriation flights. But the uptake on that was very weak, But I think once we go back to the old model where we do the fulfillment from the shops and we have a catalog of several thousand items, then I think the click and collect business will come back and it will increase, What we find is that passengers use the click and collect a lot to research the items and to find out about the items and the pricing and so on. They browse the catalog, but they might decide to just come and buy it in the shop earlier. But now I think they might be inclined to do the transaction and complete it, and we are hopeful that it will increase, and we are ready for it.
Charlotte, I don't know if you found that question yet. Have you?
Actually, it was more or less answered by that one. I was actually searching for that one as it was. Great minds and all that. I think that's probably a good time to conclude the Q&A session at this point. I think the speakers have well and truly been grilled, and thank you so much for hanging on for the extra time that you did not plan for. Yeah, but it's been fantastic, really eye-opening and insightful presentations from every one of you, and I'm sure all the attendees will agree that it's been a great afternoon or evening, morning, night for whoever is viewing in whatever country. Michael, I think you have some final housekeeping things that you need to bring this to a close.
Yeah, other than just thanking our speakers as well, from my side, I'd just like to remind everybody that the presentations will be all available on trbusiness.com in a follow-up story on the website, as will the recording of this webinar, so you can see that at your own leisure again. There is a survey, a very brief survey that you'll receive in an email after this, and I think as you close the webinar, that survey might pop up, so we'll really appreciate your feedback on that. And thanks for sticking with us for over 2 hours. This webinar was quite unprecedented and unanticipated, so thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar on 30th of June. Charlotte?
Thank you very much. Yes, we're all eagerly anticipating the next webinar and those that will follow. So thank you once again.
Thanks. Well, bye everybody. See you soon. Thanks,
thank
Clara,
you.
Alan, Ramesh, and Fanal.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.